Fallout Equestria the Chrysalis, Chapter 15, Part 3. I stopped his hoof with my own.
Are you okay?
I'm fine, he said. When I gave him a flat glare, he rolled his eyes. I landed on a box of rations. I might have cracked a rib, but I don't think so. I'll be fine.
You should get a healing potion and some rest,
I said. He shook his head. I'm not using a healing potion for every little injury. I want to save them for emergency use.
We've got plenty of caps to buy more potions when we find them, and we still have plenty for emergencies. And speaking of emergencies, we need you in good shape if we ever run into any trouble.
He eyed me for a moment, chewing on the inside of his cheek. But he finally nodded. Yeah. You're right. Fine, I'll take a potion. He reached out for the harness again, but I stopped his hoof with my own.
And you'll get some rest,
I insisted. I wish I could, he said. But the cart's half busted, and it's gonna be a right pain in the flank to haul it like it is. Sickle's out, no offense, but you and Star aren't exactly the strongest ponies around. I smiled.
I can change that.
He opened his mouth, then shut it again, blinking. Just how much can you do with that shapeshifting?
As much as I have the magic for,
I said.
Now get some rest. I can handle the wagon.
I placed my belongings on the cart and focused. I thought back to a particularly large stallion I had encountered back in wartime Appaloosa, and I imagined what he might have looked like in his prime. Huge, muscular, with a deep brown coat and a cute white stripe running down his muzzle. And then I called up my magic, pouring energy into the spell. The magical flame sprang into being and washed across me, consuming most of my reserve. It was a lot more magic than I would have liked to spend, but after Starlight's gesture, I was feeling much more comfortable with my prospects. The world stretched, and I warped in strange ways as it changed, and I blinked away the dazzling light to see the whole world had shrunk in perspective. I looked back to Starlight's wide eyes, even with my own, as she sat in the wagon, and she blinked.
Holy shit.
I grinned, half turning. The huge body felt only slightly cumbersome, but also immensely powerful and stable. Shapeshifting has its advantages. My voice rumbled, almost as deep as Sickle's. She blinked again, her head drawing back in alarm.
You're a stallion!
She blurted, her eyes darting to my hindquarters, then jerking away, sputtering for a moment, and finally covering her face with a hoof. Sickle broke out in uncontrollable laughter, while a blush rapidly spread across Starlight's cheeks. She cast a flat glare at the laughing mare.
Oh, shut up!
Sickle laughed herself into exhaustion, leaving her lying there, panting. I strapped myself into the lopsided harness while Dusty muttered to himself, I am surrounded by crazy mares. Wonderful. The uneven load and missing wheel made the going rough, but my assumed form made it fairly easy to deal with. It was just a couple minutes later when Sickle hummed approvingly.
Nice view.
I tucked my tail between my legs while she chuckled. The wagon shook as she shifted her position. A few minutes later, she started to snore.
So?
Starlight said, once she was certain Sickle was sleeping deeply.
We've finally found something Sickle is scared of.
Combat drugs makes for extreme and erratic behavior, Dusty said. I wouldn't read too much into it, though. Let's be fair, you can't kick a balefire bomb.
You can,
I said.
It just doesn't tend to improve your situation.
Dusty snickered. Okay, you can't kick a balefire explosion.
It still got her running so hard she passed out,
Starlight said.
Twice.
Dash makes you do stupid stuff like that, Dusty said. I wasn't kidding about the guy who blew up his heart. I heard him shifting around to lie back, grunting faintly, and finally shrugging. Summer breeze. Decent buck, if a bit lazy. He was in the militia, but wanted to be a ranger. Problem was, he didn't have the endurance. One of the tests for rangers is a 5-mile run in full gear. He couldn't make it in time, and he didn't have the patience to exercise to get there. Instead of giving up or exercising more, he somehow got a hold of some dash and tried again. No pony knew, of course, but we found 4 empty inhalers on him. He chain dosed on his run. The Dash told him he could keep going, so he went all out. He probably felt unstoppable. Problem was, though, Dash lies. You don't know how much strain you're putting on your body until something fails. He made it 3 miles at a full gallop with 50 pounds of gear. Then bam! He clopped his hooves together. He just drops. Unlike Sickle, he was done. Stone dead. Doc said the muscles in his heart gave out, but the Dash kept him running until his brain choked. He huffed softly, laying his head down. Some scary shit. Starlight whistled, low and quiet. Yeah, Dusty said. It was several seconds before he spoke up again. Rangers tend to carry a dose of combat drugs for emergency use. I had to use Dash once. It's potent, and can be amazingly useful at times, but I'll be happy if I never have to use anything like that ever again.
So...
Starlight said, slow and thoughtfully.
Something you don't like the idea of using, but are willing to use it if it becomes necessary?
Dusty snorted bitterly. Yeah, I get your point.
Well, you cunts, just shut up!
Sickle mumbled.
I'm trying to sleep.
Starlight and Dusty both became very quiet as we continued on across the desert. As for me, I kept casting glances back. We watched behind us the whole way out of Pale Sands, but we saw no more signs of that alicorn. Chapter 16. Homecoming. We passed the chain-link fence that marked the southern edge of the Pale Sands territory exactly 2 days after passing its twin to the north. Other than Ponytown, the entire expanse between those 2 points had become barren, empty desert. The low mountains at the edge of the Badlands drew near. For the most part, we had recovered from the incident near Ponytown. Starlight's splints had been removed, and after a bit of ginger testing and a warning to go easy on it, she was walking normally again. Healing potions are truly remarkable things. Both she and Dusty still felt a little sore from their injuries, but it was nothing significant. I had just hoped that Starlight was actually healed, rather than stubbornly refusing to acknowledge her injuries. As for Sickle, she had taken up wagon duties once more, allowing me to retake my normal, less exhausting disguise. She was unhappy with it, though possibly not for the reason that you would think.
Fucking wasted potential,
she grumbled as she pulled the cart.
I mean, come on! You give yourself a fuck stick like that, and you don't even use it? Dumb fucking cunt.
We did our best to ignore her. By midday, we were approaching the settlement on Starlight's map, a place nestled between Pale Sands and the Badlands, cheerfully named World's End. When we laid eyes on the place, I recognized it. Not the settlements, of course, as it hadn't been there before the megaspells. The terrain, however. That's something I recognized. World's End was built between a pair of rock formations that jutted up higher than the rest of the rocky hills around them. It was a distinctive landmark, one that could be used by returning changelings to orient themselves on their way home. So, we were close. The cliffs between the 2 formations were now adorned with several structures, some of which were even suspended over open space, with rope bridges crisscrossing the gap. The only presence on the ground was a fortified structure, with what looked to be a large winch lift hanging down from above. The lowest level of cliff-hanging structures had metal scraps strapped to them, and looked to give excellent firing positions over the lone access point. A few more structures were set across the tops of the rock formations, though it seemed most of the space up there had somehow been converted to crops. I found myself pondering how difficult irrigation must have been. The distant tones of a bell rung out across the distance almost as soon as we were in sight. We could see movement across the rope bridges, and the inhabitants moved up to take defensive positions. We continued on. Dusty gave a wave when we were still around a few hundred yards out. "That's good look friendly," he quietly said. Starlight and I waved as well. As we drew near the fortified lift house, I could see clearly that not all of the residents were ponies. I saw the hulking forms of a few buffalo among their numbers, and, to my surprise, the stripes and exotic stylings of a pair of zebras. There was even a pony whose face looked like it had been skinned and left to rot for a week. I figured she had to be one of those ghouls Dusty had told me about. Well, either that or one of the most unfortunate ponies of all time. Possibly both. Even from the distance, the sight provoked simultaneous feelings of sympathy and nausea. We were only 100 feet away when a heavily armored mare atop the lower fortification called out.
Hold up! We saw you coming in. You came through the pale.
It seemed more like an accusation than a question, but Dusty answered anyway. We did! She glanced to her side, to a buffalo who had what could only be described as a cannon strapped to his side. He stepped forward and spoke, his deep words echoing clearly without raising his voice. The pale ponies reign over the lands. They are the harbingers of death itself. No one passes through their domain. He gave a short pause as if for drama. So how did you escape their influence? We ran, Dusty said. Very fast. The buffalo continued to stare at him for several seconds. I was starting to grow worried, when his shoulders suddenly shook and he let out a deep laugh. You must have run very fast indeed, pony, to outrun death itself. He turned back to the mare, giving a nod. She nodded back and turned to us.
Okay, what's your business here?
We're traveling south, Dusty replied. Our wagon's damaged from our trip through the Pale, so we're hoping to get some repairs, maybe a safe bed for the night. That's it.
There ain't anything to the south of here. What's your interest there?
Dusty cast a quick glance my way before answering. It's personal business. I'd rather not shout across the whole town. If that's okay with you. She mulled over that for a moment before nodding.
Fair enough. Any trade in there?
We've got some supplies we might be convinced to part with. If the cap's alright. The mare considered us for a few seconds, tapping her hoof on the edge of the wall, and finally nodded once more.
Okay. Leave the wagon in the bunker along with your weapons, and you can come up.
She turned and called out.
Open the gate!
A minute later, we were riding the lift on the short journey up. We were just lifted up through a hole in the floor of the winch room when a set of massive claws reached out to grab the edge of the lift. Starlight yelled out in surprise and slammed into the opposite rail of the lift. I turned towards the threat, and my veins ran cold as I laid eyes on my first hellhound, mere feet from my face. He loomed over to us, towering over even Sickle. His claws were nearly as long as my foreleg, and sharp fangs protruded past his lips. A coat of dark fur covered his muscular body, thick and ragged.
Chicken shit.
Sickle muttered at Starlight as the hellhound held the lift stable and opened the gate. Then, Sickle turned to the hound.
What the fuck are you doing here, Spot?
The hellhound frowned down at her. His voice rumbled deep enough that I could have sworn I felt his words as much as I heard them. It ain't my name, Pink. She glared back at him for several long seconds before finally breaking into a grin.
Shit. It's been a long time. I didn't think I'd find you out in the ass end of Equestria.
My heart rate slowly returned to normal as it became clear that the hulking, heavily clawed monstrosity wasn't about to reduce us to bloody chunks. I only then noticed that there were a few other townsponies there, including the pair that had greeted us at the walls. Starlight still looked quite pale, backed up against the far side of the lift. Dusty just looked a little more wary than usual. Yeah. Been a long time, the hellhound said in a stilted, awkward accent, and flashed a grin full of vicious teeth. He reached out, flicking a claw against Sickle's breastplate. Must have done well. Didn't think I'd see you in this. His head tilted. You're the no boss, huh?
Nah,
Sickle said, shrugging.
I'm done with that shit.
The hellhound nodded. Good, he said. Change is good. The mare who had addressed us before cut in.
So, if you're done terrifying our guests,
she said with a teasing tone and a smile which earned a chuckle from the hellhound. Then, she looked at Dusty.
My name's Granite. I'm the mayor of our nice little town. So, who might you be?
We introduced ourselves, and she nodded along as she listened.
Good. Good. So, now then, we're not shouting across the whole town anymore, so what brings 4 well-armed ponies way down here?
I had a moment of concern, reflecting on how I had come to be a well-armed pony despite my best intentions. It was certainly an accurate description. I'd been carrying 2 firearms, a pair of grenades, and more than 200 rounds of ammunition, and that wasn't counting the pipe rifle with another 100 rounds I'd packed away, or the significant arsenal contained within our wagon. I quickly shook off the feeling of distress and refocused on the conversation. Fortunately, it seems Dusty had used the short delay for our ride up to plan a response that didn't involve looking for an ancient changeling hive. We were looking for a pony, and heard that he headed out into the Badlands. The town's ponies exchanged wary glances. Granite frowned slightly before continuing.
So, you're bounty hunters then?
Dusty shook his head. No, we're not after him for money. We're just trying to bring a bad pony to justice. She mulled over it for a few moments, her frown deepening.
I see. And who is this pony you're looking for?
His name's Banger. I'm afraid the name is all I have to go on. He sold out a bunch of ponies to be raped and murdered.
Never heard of him.
Granite said, but finally nodded.
Ain't our business what you do out there, just keep it out there. We won't be having any of that in our town, got it?
Got it, Dusty said.
Good.
She turned, gesturing a hoof to the stallion beside her.
Sundown can show you the lower berths. Any pony that wants to trade will meet you there, and there are beds in the back if you're spending the night. 100 caps, and the place is yours for the day.
She fixed Dusty with a firm stare.
I'd suggest not staying too long. Once word gets out that you're hunting some pony, you ain't gonna find many friendly faces.
We're just passing through, Dusty said. We're not here for any pony in your town, just...
Ain't any pony gonna care who you're after,
Nimir shot back.
And we ain't gonna care about why you're after them. Just that you are after them. Now, we're gonna be gracious hosts and let you rest for the night, but I expect you to be on your kindest behavior.
She looked around at us.
And I expect you to be gone in the morning. You got it?
Dusty hesitated, but finally nodded. Yes, ma'am.
Good.
She said with a sharp nod.
And if you ever have to come around again for another pony, I suggest you steer clear out of here. We don't take kindly to that sort of thing.
Dusty nodded again. Sundown led us along a series of walkways and rope bridges until we descended to a low-hanging structure, a short distance away. Wide windows gave a good view over the crevice between the two giant pillars of rock, while inside were a few tables, a half-dozen chairs, and a few simple cots. On the way, Dusty also filled me in on the Hellhounds and how the Diamond Dogs, even on the bottom end of equestrian society, had somehow won the magical radiation mutation lottery to become the most dangerous creatures in the wasteland. Once we had arrived at our lodgings, Sundown informed us that we were to remain in the lower town, between the berth we were in and the lift down. The rest of the town was off limits. As soon as he had left, Dusty started grumbling. So, apparently tracking down an accusatory to rape and murder is a bad thing now.
Well, I thought it was a good story,
I said. He flashed a wry smile, which died as quickly as it came. And I can't help but note that they stuck us in the lowest part of their town, with only a single, easily defended route back to the rest. I looked back. The stairs leading up from our current residence ended up on an open platform connected to the rest of the lower town by a long rope bridge. One of the defensive positions overlooked the entire length of it, and I couldn't help but notice that it was occupied. The Earth Pony with a double-barrel shotgun was the most obvious, but it was the zebra that really caught my attention. She was almost entirely hidden under her cloak, but it didn't hide the long, slender rifle she had braced on the frame of the window. While the Earth Pony was relaxed and laid back, though with the shotgun within easy reach, the zebra appeared completely focused, as if expecting trouble.
Well, that's comforting,
Starlight said.
And our guns are all down on the ground. You dumb fucks and your guns,
Sickle grumbled as she dug around in her armored bags. She eventually retrieved another pill bottle, popping it open, and slapping a pill back between the bars of her muzzle. Dusty scowled. Seriously? After what happened yesterday?
Fuck off,
Sickle snarled, turning to head back the way we came. Hey, wait! Dusty called out after her. Where are you going? She halted, turning to look over her shoulder.
Me? I just spent half a day staring at the ass end of a big beefy stallion and thinking of all the fun I could have with some pony I don't have to worry about breaking in half. Except Whimper's a fucking pussy. So I'm gonna find Spot again, pin that mutt to the first flat surface I can, and fuck his dumb little brains out. You're going to... with the Hellhound? Starlight blurted, looking at Sickle in shock. Fuck yeah with a Hellhound, Sickle said. Spot's about the only one who's ever matched me in wrestling, and he's a lot better at fucking than most stallions. She grinned. Besides, Hellhounds are a lot more interesting. Ponies, they're all just smooth and boring, but hellhound cocks are... Okay, goddesses! I don't care!
Starlight replied, bringing both forehooves over her ears.
Then why the fuck do you even ask?
Sickles said, her grin taking on an increasingly sadistic twist.
Or are you jealous?
She hiked her scraggly tail, leaving her bare and unarmored rear fully exposed.
Come on then, stick your face right up in there and put your mouth of yours to use for once. You're revolting!
Starlight said, turning away, her eyes narrowing in an angry glare and color tinting in her cheeks. Sickle laughed.
Nah, I just know how to have some fucking fun instead of being a little bitch all the time.
Her tail lowered again.
And if you cunts are gonna be so damn uptight, then I'll just have to find someone else that does know how to relax.
She climbed the stairs and left. Dusty sighed. I really hope she isn't about to get us all in trouble.
When does she not?
Starlight asked with a grumble, tossing her saddlebags onto one of the cots.
Maybe we should just go. We're obviously not welcome here.
It's tempting, Dusty said. But I'd still like to see if we can get our wagon fixed. The terrain ahead is a lot more rough. Even if the wagon holds up, it's gonna be a pain in the ass to haul with a broken wheel. Starlight flopped out on one of the cots, burying her face in an old straw pillow that muffled her voice.
Yeah. Well, that'd be Sickles' problem.
Except, I'm sure it would make her even more irritable, and then she'd make it our problem. Besides, all of our stuff is in that wagon. She sighed.
Yeah, fine.
Dusty and I sat at one of the tables. Lacking anything better to do, I dug out one of the packages of ancient, pre-cooked food from my saddlebags. I was halfway through it when Sundown returned with a couple of townsponies to discuss trade. One was the ghoul I had spotted before, giving me a good look at her, or at least as good as I could get without being obvious in my attention. It was, to my surprise, less concerning up close. Yeah, it gave me a clear view of the decay the poor pony had suffered, to the point that I could see bare skull in a couple of places, but it also led me to see that her condition appeared relatively stable. I had imagined the decay as active, festering rot, but it was actually fairly clean. If not for the difference in appearance, I probably wouldn't even noted her. She participated in the negotiations with the same cautiously friendly attitude of her companions, showing no sign of burden over her condition. In the end, Dusty managed to get lodging for the night and repairs to the wagons for the exorbitant price of 2 of our spare assault rifles and 10 loaded magazines. We could afford it though. After looting most of a mercenary company and seizing their supply wagon, it was a small portion of what we owned. We were apparently moderately wealthy by wasteland standards. We returned to our accommodations for the evening while the other ponies worked on our cart. Dusty took a chair and dragged it to the edge of the structure and spent his time leaning against the window frame. It gave him the perfect vantage point to watch over our wagon. I rested my forelegs onto the windowsill beside him and looked down. A buffalo had shoved his shoulder under the edge of the wagon, lifting it up while a pony used a length of wood to brace it in place.
You're worried,
I said, keeping my voice low. You're not?
I'm always a little paranoid,
I said.
It kinda comes with a profession.
He gave a short huff and the corner of his mouth twitched upwards. I guess we both got that in common.
I guess we do.
I agreed. He slowly nodded, his voice quieting to a whisper. So, I know the soldiers' take of the situation. What's the spies' take?
Concerned,
I said.
There are a few reasons to react that poorly to the story of bringing a pony to justice.
Yeah, Dusty said. That's what I was thinking. Shit. And here I thought I made a good story.
No, it was good,
I said, giving him a smile.
The creative use of true events is one of the best ways to fabricate a cover story. Consistency is one of the most important factors when constructing a long-term falsehood, and it's much easier to be consistent when you're using real-world facts.
He cast a glance sideways my way before looking back to our wagon. Thanks. I guess. Still, backfired.
It's a rare lie that doesn't have the chance to backfire,
I said.
And since I'd really rather not advertise to everyone that we're looking for a specific place instead of a specific pony, I'd have likely come up with a similar story myself. They might draw the wrong conclusions about what's out there, and I'd really rather not have a bunch of treasure-hunting ponies digging around my hive. I appreciate the discretion.
He gave another little huff and a shadow of a laugh. Thanks. He shook his head again. Not that it seems to have helped our situation. I nodded.
True. Fortunately, whatever the reasons to dislike us, the town as a group doesn't seem intent on harming us. I'm concerned that individuals in the town might not share that thinking, however. I think we'll be safe during the day while their guards are watching us, but I'm not sure if...
We're not staying the night, Dusty said. I'd been thinking the same thing. We'll head out as soon as they get that wagon fixed. He looked back to me. Now get some rest. Just be ready to do your thing if some pony starts something. I hesitated, but nodded. I'm not sure what he expected my thing to be, though. I suppose I'd have to improvise. The rest of the evening was... well, it was uneventful. Despite the constant low-level tension, it was a familiar feeling. From Dusty's relaxed posture and perceptive eyes, it seemed one he was quite familiar with as well. The sun was getting low when Dusty stood up. Looks like they finished. Let's get moving. Wait, where's Sickle? Sickle wasn't in the small portion of the town that we were told to stay in, to absolutely nobody's surprise. A few armed ponies, as well as the cannon-armed buffalo, met us when we made our way to the lift, and one of the ponies headed off to track her down. Several minutes later, Sickle and her hulking hellhound friend made their way down to us, along the ramps and walkways. Sickle wore a very satisfied smirk as she walked up.
Hey bitches, the fuck's up now?
We're leaving, Dusty said, and Sickle halted, scowling.
Seriously? We just fucking got here!
The wagon's fixed, Dusty said. We can get a few more hours in before it gets dark, so we're heading out. Sickle groaned.
Wonderful. We finally get a new place where we can relax and have fun. You dumb cunts are trying to drag me off already. Could have spent the whole fucking night like mad, but no!
The hellhound gave a quick wince, ears folding back, and he cast a quick glance at the couple of townsponies nearby. None of them seemed to notice. Their attention was focused on Sickle.
Isn't like you have to come with us,
Starlight grumbled. Sickle gave an angry snort, but then grinned.
Nah. I ain't gonna miss out on this shit.
She then lifted a hoof to point at Dusty.
But you're hauling the cart. I'm done for the day.
Fine, Dusty said. The hellhound reached out, placing his huge claws across Sickle's shoulders. You should stay, Pink. This is a good place. She looked back to him, pausing only a moment before letting out a snort.
If it's a good place, you really don't want me here. Besides, I'd get bored. Not enough fighting.
She chuckled a little, flashing a grin up at the hellhound.
Might have to swing by and visit every now and then. It's been way too fucking long.
The hellhound chuckled in reply, though his sideways glance towards the other ponies made it seem slightly awkward to me. We loaded into the lift, and the hellhound unlatched it, letting us descend. Granite watched us from the nearby guard post, and so did several other ponies, and I caught at least a couple disapproving glares. We retrieved our gear, and Dusty strapped himself into the restored harness. While we were strapped on pouches and guns, Sickle climbed up into the wagon, flopping back heavily with a satisfied grunt. Soon the cart was rolling along down the slight slope, leading away from the town. The sound of glass bottles clinking together rose from the wagon as Sickle rooted around in her bags, finally pulling out a couple bottles of antique beer.
Shit, it's been a long time since I saw Spot,
she said, dropping all but one of the bottles beside her.
Met him when I was still with my old gang. He had the same caravan we were setting up to jump.
She popped open the bottle and took a long swig. Then she snickered.
He popped out of the ground right under the Brahmin. Fuck, you should have seen it. It was like a damn thing... The damn thing exploded. Meat and guts fucking everywhere.
She laughed, and while beside me, Starlight scowled and muttered.
Must have been love at first sight. Fuck no. That was our caravan, not his. Of course, most of those pussies didn't want anything to do with a hellhound, but I went down there and butted heads with him.
She tapped the lip of the bottle against the cheek of her helm, then traced down along her neck to her shoulder.
Can still kinda see the scar where he caught me. Damn near took my head off. I remember him grinning all smug-like until I planted a hoof right in his gut. I should have seen his dumb expression when he looked up and realized he just got pinned by a pony. You have such a charming way of making friends.
Sickle shrugged and took another swig of her drink before continuing.
I almost wanted to kill him for clawing my face up, but I was so high I couldn't even feel it. Besides, it was fun. We just kind of wrestled and beat on each other until we were both exhausted. Then we kicked back and shared some beers.
She grinned over her bottle.
Oh, and then we fucked. Of course you did.
Starlight muttered.
Because the first thing you would think when you see some monstrous creature tearing an animal to pieces is, hey, I wonder if I could have sex with it.
Sickle snickered.
Pretty sure you'd think too, if you ever gave it a chance.
She waved her bottle our way.
Should get your mare friend to turn into a hellhound and give you a good hard fucking. You'll see, you'll see.
Starlight's ears laid back as she grimaced, color rising in her cheeks.
I'll pass, thanks. Come on,
Sickle teased.
I thought you liked the cock, and two-leggers just let it hang out in the open. You can't tell me that you didn't get a good eyeful of that sheath.
She took another draw from her bottle before tossing it out behind us.
I ain't kidding though. You should try it. I fucked a lot of things. Buffalo, zebras, donkeys, even a pair of griffins this one time, and a lot of ponies. Hellhounds, got them beat. Easy.
Starlight shot her a glare.
Seriously, how do you not have, like every disease ever?
Sickle stared at her for a few seconds before shrugging.
Health potions? They don't.
Starlight stopped herself, shook her head, and simply continued walking. Sickle just chuckled quietly and laid back, relaxing. There were several seconds of silence before she muttered.
Fuck. Now I'm horny again.
We ignored her, of course. We even continued to ignore her when she unstrapped one of her spiked hoof boots. The side walls of the wagon helped, concealing most of the contents of the wagon from us, but they did little to block the sound. Sickle was, as with all things she did, extremely unsubtle. Dusty continued on with equal measures of disgust and determination, with his ears laid back against the sound as his scowling gaze fixed straight ahead. Starlight and I drifted a little further from the cart, and I did my best not to dwell on the situation. None of us said anything about it, naturally. We were almost a mile away from the town when I noticed Dusty's head dip down to reach into the folds of his cloth barding, drawing out the pistol he'd concealed there, and returned it to its holster. Before ending off this long video here, I want to give a big, giant shout out to my very, very kind donators. Yoshi Super Saiyan 2, Peter Coulthard, Nicholas Springthorpe, Dospo, David D. Sanchez, Dwight Cornel, Gagi, Starlight Glimmer, Trey, Pokekillerzach, SoulDragon, Britton, and Joe Pearce. Thank you all very much for watching this very extensive video, and I will see you all in the next one.